Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 11 waiver wire ads for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, I'm going to be going over my top 10 waiver wire ads of the week, as well as explaining into why I believe you guys should be picking these players up right now. But before we can get on into things, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure to leave a like on today's video. It would help us out a ton. And if you would like to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 11 waiver wire ads. We begin with my number 1 waiver wire ad of the week, and that is AJ Dillon, running back of the Green Bay Packers, going up against the Minnesota Vikings this week in Minnesota. Aaron Jones, in their game last week up against the Seattle Seahawks, suffered a mild MCL sprain and will miss 1 to 2 weeks, which is obviously bad news for Aaron Jones, because while Aaron Jones hadn't been the amazing fantasy football running back that I thought he would be this season, he was still a very serviceable running back that you could see having a top 5 performance week in and week out. And we did see, as of recently, AJ Dillon get a little bit more workload in this offense, but at the end of the day, was he going to be able to dethrone Aaron Jones? Of course not. Aaron Jones was still the lead back on the team, but now, with Aaron Jones out for at least the next 1 or 2 weeks with that mild MCL sprain, we are going to be seeing AJ Dillon in the driver's seat. And this week, up against the Minnesota Vikings, this could be a smash spot for AJ Dillon, where he could potentially be a top 5 running back on the week. In week number 10, up against the Seattle Seahawks, after Aaron Jones ended up getting hurt, we saw Dillon take over as that lead back, having 21 rushes for 66 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as having 2 receptions on 2 targets for 62 yards. So until Aaron Jones returns, I think that AJ Dillon is basically in the must-start category for fantasy football in terms of running backs. I love him this week up against the Minnesota Vikings, and I love him going forward until we see Aaron Jones return. Next up, we got another running back, Rhamondre Stevenson, running back of the New England Patriots, going up against the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta on Thursday Night Football. So Damian Harris missed last week's game up against the Cleveland Browns, and in that game, we saw Rhamondre Stevenson take over. Harris did not practice today on Monday, so it is entirely possible that since the game is on Thursday night, since there's less time to recover, that Damian Harris will be down for the count yet again. He will be out in this game up against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I'm not saying that is a 100% lock that we don't see Damian Harris in this game, but it seems pretty unlikely at this point. If Damian Harris is not back, I am very confident that we could see Rhamondre Stevenson put up a top 10, maybe even a top 5 performance in this game up against the Atlanta Falcons. Last week up against the Cleveland Browns, he had 20 rushes for 100 yards and not 1, 2 touchdowns in that game. He also had 4 receptions on 5 targets for 14 yards. So Rhamondre Stevenson was given the lion's share of carries. Bill Belichick clearly trusted Stevenson to be the lead back in Damian Harris's absence. If Damian Harris is back, I expect Stevenson's value to go down the fucking toilet. I don't expect Rhamondre Stevenson to have all that much value when Damian Harris is back. But if Damian Harris does end up missing this game, then I love Rhamondre Stevenson. Next up, we got another running back, and that is Wayne Gallman, running back of the Atlanta Falcons, going up against the New England Patriots. Also, Thursday Night Football. Obviously, Cordero Patterson is dealing with an ankle sprain, and since the game is on Thursday Night Football, all the reports are pointing towards Cordero Patterson not playing. And that is going to be chef's kiss, magnifique for the upside of Wayne Gallman. Now, week number 10 up against the Dallas Cowboys, Gallman had 15 rushes for 55 yards, as well as having 1 reception on 2 targets for 21 yards. That was basically the complete and utter opposite game script as to what you want for a running back in that game up against the Dallas Cowboys, because the Atlanta Falcons got absolutely destroyed in that game. The Cowboys laid a pipe to the Falcons defense, and then when the Falcons got on offense after they've been scored on a million times, they weren't able to do anything. So Wayne Gallman was still able to provide some value in a game that had negative game script. And he also received a higher workload than Mike Davis last week. Now, I understand some people might just be like, oh, you know what? Since Cordarrelle Patterson's probably not going to play. I don't know if I can trust Wayne Gallman, and I understand that, right? I don't want to tell you guys that, hey, Wayne Gallman is a must-start running back on the week, just like I would tell you that AJ Dillon is without Aaron Jones, obviously, and Rhamondre Stevenson could be without Damian Harris, but I do believe that he is a guy that I'm wanting to roster and potentially play in this game up against the Patriots because it seems very unlikely that we see Cordarrelle Patterson. Next up, we move to a quarterback, and that is Wham Bam Cam Newton, quarterback of the Carolina Panthers, going up against the Washington football team this week. It seems more and more likely that Wham Bam Cam Newton is going to be the starting quarterback this week. Last week up against the Arizona Cardinals, he wasn't really put in the position to throw the ball a million times, to run the ball a lot, obviously, because PJ Walker was the starting quarterback. He got there, I believe, on Wednesday or Thursday. The game's on Sunday. There's no way that the guy's going to figure out the whole fucking playbook in like 3 days. But he did see some use in that game up against the Arizona Cardinals in the desert. He had 3 completions on 4 attempts for 8 yards as well as a touchdown. He also had 3 rushes for 14 yards and a touchdown. So the man scored 2 fucking touchdowns and was barely on the field. Now, I don't expect Cam Newton to just be amazing down the stretch of the season, right? To be like a top 5 quarterback, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had multiple top 5 showings with his rushing upside because it appears that the Carolina Panthers want to let him loose on the goal line. Now, I understand, but Nick, Christian McCaffrey is there. Christian McCaffrey got absolutely screwed over by the fact that Cam Newton was there, and that showed so much to me that I am very confident in Cam Newton going forward. Again, I'm not going to proclaim that he's just going to be up there as a top 5 quarterback every single week, but the upside is definitely there this week up against the Washington football team, and I believe that Cam Newton is a guy that needs to be owned in a majority of leagues. Next up, we got Rashod Bateman, wide receiver of the Baltimore Ravens, going up against the Chicago Bears. But before we hear about Rashod Bateman, I'd like to let you guys know that we have partnered with Yahoo Fantasy this NFL season to bring you guys some great offers. Check out our exclusive limited time offer, which gets you guys 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. To qualify, you need to be new to Yahoo. Sign up for an account via the link down below, deposit, and play. That's it. Yahoo will send us your name after you play in your first paid contest, and we'll reach out to you via email with your coupon. If you would like immediate access, that's okay as well. All you have to do is email support@awesemo.com and we'll get you set up immediately. You can also claim a free $10 below, which can be used to play on any Yahoo contest, including tonight's $100,000 Monday Night Football baller. Make sure you guys use our DFS tools and projections designed specifically for Yahoo to give you guys the best shot to win big. Back on into the video, we got Rashod Bateman, wide receiver of the Baltimore Ravens, this week going up against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. Despite a disaster of a game for the Baltimore Ravens, them somehow miraculously losing to the Miami Dolphins, we still saw that Rashod Bateman was successful in that game, having 6 receptions on 8 targets for 80 yards. It's very clear that Rashod Bateman is the number 2 wide receiver on the team. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and proclaim that he's the number 2 receiving option because it seems like some weeks it's Hollywood Brown, some weeks it's going to be obviously Mark Andrews, but Rashod Bateman still is pretty high in the pecking order of the team, and I believe he will be a very reliable wide receiver going forward for the Baltimore Ravens, and I expect them to bounce back in a big way this week up against the Chicago Bears. Next up, we move to a tight end with Dan Arnold, get to the chopper, tight end of the Jacksonville Jaguars, going up against the San Francisco 49ers. Dan Arnold appears to be the only reliable receiving option week in and week out for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Last week up against the Indianapolis Colts, Dan Arnold had 5 receptions on 7 targets for 67 yards. Over the last 3 games, this man has had 24 targets. It seems as though it's destined, it's etched in the fucking stars that Dan Arnold is meant to be a big piece in this offense. Now, I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to steamroll the 49ers this week, but I do believe that Dan Arnold is going to be a very safe and reliable tight end going forward, and I expect him to have a lot of value this week up against the Niners. Next up, we move to another Jacksonville Jaguar, Jamal Agnew, wide receiver of the Jaguars, going up against the 49ers. Now, I know I just said that hey, Dan Arnold is the only reliable receiving option on the team weekly, and that might be true, but Jamal Agnew just seems like exactly what we thought Laviska Shenault was going to be. It's, Laviska Shenault just isn't doing anything, but Jamal Agnew is doing exactly what we thought Shenault was going to do. In week number 10, up against the Colts, the guy had 5 targets for 0 receptions, but he had 3 rushes for 79 yards and a touchdown. Now, I understand I don't very much believe that Jamal Agnew is a super reliable option. But at the end of the day, when you're scavenging for a starting wide receiver off the waiver wire, to me, with how the Jacksonville Jaguars look, Jamal Agnew seems to have a very solid role in this offense, and I believe in Jamal Agnew, so he is one of my waiver wire ads of the week. Next up, we move back to the running back position with Foreman, running back of the Tennessee Titans, going up against the Houston Texans. Is this a revenge game? Pretty sure Foreman was a backup for the Houston Texans for years. Potential revenge game here. While every single person, including myself, was talking up Adrian Peterson, was talking up Jeremy McNichols, seems like Foreman was the fucking guy we should have all been adding. In week number 10 up against the Saints, he led the team in rushing attempts with 11. He had 11 rushing attempts for 30 rushing yards, as well as 2 receptions on 2 targets for 48 yards. Now it's very clear that the Titans are a running back by committee. That would have sounded absolutely fucking insane if I said that at the beginning of the season, because Derrick Henry is the clear lead back on the team when he was healthy. But now, when it's AP, when it's McNichols, and when it's Foreman, this committee system might be in favor of Foreman. Now, I'm not saying go crazy and start Foreman this week up against the Houston Texans. Now, maybe you want to because it's a soft serve matchup up against the Texans. But I do believe we could see Foreman's role increase, thus making him a running back that you want to add to your fantasy team. So go ahead and pick up Foreman, beat the crowd, because maybe he has a great game up against the Texans, and now everyone wants to have Foreman, and now you already got him on your team 1 week early. Next up, we got a wide receiver, Robby Anderson of the Carolina Panthers, going up against the Washington football team. With Cam Newton as the starter of the Carolina Panthers, we may actually see Robby Anderson return to being a relevant wide receiver in fantasy football. When Cam Newton was on the field with the Panthers, we saw Robby Anderson score a fucking touchdown. It seemed like Robby Anderson was never going to score touchdowns. The guy was basically invisible, doing his Houdini impression over the last basically the whole season. But now, with Cam Newton, the relevance appears to be occurring for Robby Anderson, that he's going to actually be a fantasy-relevant player. Last week, up against the Cardinals, he had 4 receptions on 6 targets for 37 yards and a touchdown. So with Cam Newton under center, maybe, just maybe, he's going to be able to squeeze out all of that fantasy value for Robby Anderson. Final player to discuss in today's video is wide receiver Michael Gallup of the Dallas Cowboys, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs this week in Kansas City. While Michael Gallup is the clear number 3 receiver on the team, and I understand that not everyone wants to add the wide receiver 3 on any team. I understand that. The Dallas Cowboys are just so fucking good that I think you want to be rostering Michael Gallup. Last week up against the Falcons, in his return game, he had 3 receptions on 5 targets for 42 yards. Again, it might take an injury, knock on wood, I don't root for injuries, to Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb for Michael Gallup to be a very relevant fantasy option. But when you're down bad, maybe with bye weeks, or maybe your wide receivers aren't so hot, and maybe it's a great matchup like it is up against the Kansas City Chiefs, then Michael Gallup will have a lot more fantasy relevance than a lot of people would like to believe. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, as well as leaving a like on today's video. I would appreciate it a ton. Make sure you guys do check out Yahoo Fantasy. The link is down below in the description. I love you guys all. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. As always, goodbye.